Yes, you are listening to something fresh. No, I'm not DJ Fresh, but this is Safaras Takolia, Friday Night Live with ST. Humanity sets the agenda. Hoping you're having a good evening. If you've just tuned in, you must out on a whole lot, but anyway, it's never too late. It's time for the sports segment. We're focusing on the football, the Euro final. A very interesting, obviously, tournament it's been thus far. Next week or so, inshallah, we'll have Yusuf Saib here. We're going to catch up on the Formula One. Anyway, interact with us on 0617660355. Tonight, obviously, we speak to Lenn Moleko and Salailo Makwidiri, Mr. SM Digital himself. We're talking, obviously, about the Euro 2020 and the final. And joining us now, obviously, is Lenn and Salailo, respectively. Lenn, good evening. Welcome once again. Evening, Lenn. Good evening. Welcome once again.
Thank you very much. Always a pleasure being on the show.
Great stuff, man. We are, well, I don't know. Salailo's hiding somewhere. Anyway, looking at obviously the Euro tournament thus far, right? Obviously, we've come now, we're ushering towards the final. We were having this discussion obviously a few weeks back, and we spoke about, depth about certain squads, mainly being France, Germany. I think I personally underestimated England. I didn't think they'd obviously make it to the final.
We all did.
Yeah. But not forgetting, obviously, mastermind Roberto Mancini.
We all underestimated.
Okay, Lenn, we're just struggling to hear you there. Lenn, you still with us? Okay, we're just struggling with the network there with Lenn. Okay, we're talking Euro 2020, 2021, whatever you want to call it. And it's the final. We obviously want your interaction as well. You can comment below, and we're going to get Lenn back online.
Them getting as far as they did. Nobody anticipated them to get this far.
Okay, Lenn is back.
A couple of scrappy games.
Okay, we got no visual, but we can hear Lenn.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. We're just struggling with obviously the visuals. Okay, there we go. Okay, right. Now we were talking about obviously the underestimation of the England squad, right? But we did see the potential that obviously Italy and the intent that Italy obviously showed from the onset, right? I do see that obviously, well, I don't know if you'd agree, but Belgium, with obviously without Kevin De Bruyne and maybe Rajan Angolan in the midfield, there's a bit of a loophole in the Belgian squad. Roberto Martinez perhaps needs to fill that void. But very shocking results. I mean, looking at obviously France, looking at obviously very impressive from Denmark as well to come that far in the tournament. And also Switzerland. Okay, there's Salilo. We got him live. We Lenn.
Okay. So
okay.
I was saying that. Are you able to hear me?
Yeah, you can go ahead.
All right. I was saying it's such unfortunate circumstances that Belgium found themselves in. They were not able to put away the games that they were able to. I mean, they were the favorites going into this competition along with France. But France, I feel, threw it away in the last 10 minutes against Switzerland. They should have won that game. I mean, they were leading 3-1 at some point. But I feel there's a level of arrogance that came with how they approached the game, especially in the last 10 minutes, and things didn't go their way. And it's so unfortunate further that they found themselves with problems in the dressing room after the actual game, because the mother of this one was fighting with the mother of that one, the father of that one, which are things that really are not needed on the soccer field. But looking at England, it's a question that you asked me earlier on, and I don't think I actually got to answer it properly because of the connection problems that I'm seemingly having. It's nobody would have thought they would have gotten this far. I personally didn't think they would have gotten this far. But once they qualified in their group, they sort of like had somewhat of an easy path to get to where they are now. I mean, playing Denmark in the semifinals, playing Ukraine in the quarterfinals, and at some point in their last 16 game, memory serves me correctly, they played against Germany. But this was a
Correct.
watered down Germany. This was a watered down Germany team, which
And
I
that
feel.
game reminded me of Ellis Park 2010. It was the same fixture in the World Cup 2010, where Frank Lampard and Rooney obviously had to go back home, and it was so intriguing to see. Obviously, inform Raheem Sterling. And we do recall that back in the 90s, obviously, Gareth Southgate was obviously, in a Euro tournament and World Cup as well. Looking at obviously Harry Maguire and the pressure he's come under and the scrutiny, obviously being, making errors, mistakes. Salalo, what do you think, obviously, about what Len is saying about the England squad? Me personally, I felt Belgium were definitely going to take it, or better, or the French, the Paris. But anyway, I mean, you got Mbappe, in form, on fire, Karim Benzema, and then obviously, the depth in the squad with N'Golo Kante. You've got Pogba. We understand obviously maybe a bit of arrogance could have played a part. But what do you make? I mean, England coming here, and I'm really intrigued to see how the Italians are going to react because obviously we've got the well-experienced Roberto Mancini.
I think it's a really interesting fixture. I think it was really unprecedented. I think everyone was expecting at least one of the teams who was in that group with Portugal, Belgium, and France to maybe be in the finals. But unfortunately, that was not to be. You have an England squad which I think has not really been tested. They haven't really come against a
Tough
team that
opposition.
that pushed them to the limits. I mean, you saw under when they played the Danish that in a way they were tested and they could have lost it here. If you could have seen some of the chances that Denmark got. Unfortunately, I think in that game the Danish gave them a bit too much respect. They started sitting back, and that's when you really allow England to start coming at you. They have really amazing forwards. And also the depth in their squad. I mean, you saw in extra time when
Now, I
Southgate.
just want to come in there for a moment. Looking
Yeah,
at the gelling of the team, I mean, you got Luke Shaw finding
mhm.
Raheem Sterling. I mean, it sort of reminded me about, Kevin De Bruyne and the way he plays at Man City. No, but I'm saying, look at the adaptability between Luke Shaw and he obviously finding Raheem Sterling. And the depth of the squad, as you mentioned, right? We
Yeah,
do. I see we've lost Len with visual. We're just going to get him back on. But now I want to go back a bit, right?
yeah,
I think 2 weeks back, yourself and I were talking, and I think Len as well. We were speaking about the Oranje. We've forgotten here, all right? And I was still saying that obviously Quincy Promise, Memphis Depay, the list goes on, and I really thought that they'd come, to the final or at least the semi-final. We saw at the Ajax Stadium them losing out in a home crowd. Patrick Van Aanholt showing obviously emotions. What do you make of obviously the tournament thus far? And you think Italy, from the onset, showed the intent that they wanted this tournament?
yeah, definitely. I think the Italians were the first country to qualify for the knockout stages. They from the start, everyone was just surprised about how well they played. They're not conceding a lot, and then they're scoring freely. They're getting goals from everywhere. So I think it was expected that I think after maybe the round of 16 that maybe Italy was one of the nations to look out for because of just how ruthless they were and how physical they've been playing, and also them just not allowing any goals. I think their defense duo of Bonucci and Chiellini, really did so amazingly
The
well.
wall.
Yeah, the wall, so to say.
The
So
wall of lead.
it was brilliant. They no one saw them coming. As we mentioned that everyone was expecting at least a France, a Belgium, which everyone is saying they have a golden generation. They're the number one nation in the world right now according to FIFA ranking.
Spain. I think
Spain
it's the end of an
also.
era.
What era? Someone might ask. I think the era that ended of Spain that was
Yeah.
notable was the era that won the World Cup. I think
Yeah.
since
Definitely.
after that they've been trying to find their feet, try to find their rhythm to basically understand where they are, where they want to go, because they seem a bit lost. They no
Well,
longer have an identity.
two
That
things here, Salalo. Obviously, the English Premier League being one of the most difficult leagues in the world in football, number one. But on the other hand, we did talk about the lack of Inter Milan players in the squad, and I was still asking the question about the team selection of Roberto Mancini. Obviously, we've got an informed Donnarumma there, and he's shown signs of obviously, former greats in the Italian national squad. But looking at the whole layout now for the final and the build up, right? Okay, we've got Len on phone. Len, you with us?
Yes, I'm with you, definitely.
Okay, awesome stuff. Right now, so Salalo and I are talking about the Italian squad, and 2 weeks ago I was still speaking about the lack of Inter Milan players, and I was debating the team selection from Roberto Mancini's point of view, and choosing Ciro Immobile in the front, and also the whole Chiesa in the midfield coming up on the right. What do you make of obviously the whole Italian team selection from Roberto Mancini's perspective? Moving to the final now, right? You both obviously saying that England haven't faced heavy opposition. I think Italy is really going to play with a lot of pressure, team pressing. What do you make? What do you think the tactic would be here now going into the final, based on how both teams have played in the tournament thus far?
Look, I agree with the narrative that England have not faced a tougher position thus far. The closest to them playing anybody tough was their game against Germany. But like I said earlier on, this is a half-cooked Germany team that was with a manager who's on his way out, regardless if he had won or not. But looking at the Italians, they faced some pretty formidable opponents, especially in the knockout stage, and they've managed to come out top. And there is a nice mixture of the old guard and some of the new players who are obviously doing service for the Italians. And you've got the likes of Chiellini and Bonucci at the back. We've seen what they are able to do. We've seen that they not only players who can give you 90 minutes, they can go beyond the 90 minutes. And you look at that, and Roberto Mancini, obviously having worked in England for quite some time with Manchester City, he's able to sort of like pick up what the English are able to do. He knows the English style of doing things. And unfortunately for England, they don't look like they've got a plan B when it comes to anything that they have to deal with. So
okay. I want to come in with a bit of pre-match talking points, and I'd like both Salalo to obviously comment on some. Sure. Looking from an Italian perspective, it's Italy's 10th major tournament final, right? 6 World Cups and 4 Euros, if I understand correctly, right? England, this will be their first ever appearance in a European Championship final. I think it's dating back to about maybe the 60s or 1966. And obviously, it's going to be at Wembley, right? What are you guys thinking about, obviously home advantage, the drive of obviously the England squad right now? They're thriving because obviously it's their first ever appearance in a European competition final.
Yeah, I think as Len mentioned, the English seem to have only one plan, Plan A, which is Raheem Sterling and Harry Kane coming to the party, and if they don't, there seems to be problems there. Never mind the depth that they have in their squad. They have Calvin Louis, who's really hadn't got going. He's still getting his feet in the national team. They have Phil Foden, who for some reason that I don't understand is not playing. But yeah,
Mm.
that's a debate for another day. But I think for the English, it's just that. It's just them to have that plan A working. To have Bukayo Saka, being the one who's the primary supplier there to Harry Kane and Raheem Sterling. And if that doesn't work, I think Gareth Southgate needs to find another plan somewhere. But yeah, looking at the team, it's solid. These are the guys that play with each other, week in, week out in the Premier League. They understand each other. They understand each other's style of playing. So I think they do have the advantage. If you look at it, I mean, playing at Wembley, it's going to be packed. And another advantage I think that they've had all of this tournament is playing almost all of their games at Wembley. It was an advantage for them, and I think one of the reasons why they made it to the final. But yeah, I think they just need to have Harry Kane and Raheem Sterling going with, of course, Bukayo Saka there running. And I think that's what's going to work for them. Aside from that, I think Italy has a really solid defense. I think they are one team throughout the tournament have been quite solid in the important aspects of the field. The middle and the back four led by Bonucci and Chiellini. So
Now,
if they can contain the threat of Harry Kane and Sterling, which is a serious threat, on their day they can both punish teams.
definitely
So if
poachers.
that the defense can handle those two, I think Italy. I mean, the English might have another thing coming. They might not
Now,
come home.
if we look at obviously the Italian perspective, the English obviously being the EPL being one of the toughest leagues, right? We, looking at obviously the game plan going into the final and the formation, right? Tactically, uh, on paper, obviously we are obviously discussing obviously the firepower of the forwards and the backline of the Italians, but from a tactical perspective, looking at both obviously Gareth Southgate and the expertise and the experience, the depth of experience, the wealth of experience from Roberto Mancini. How do you think the final will play? 4-3-3, maybe England, in a 4-2-3-1 with the Italians, or you think full out attack? What do you think? Which team might play a bit more team pressing higher up or higher pressure? Okay, I've lost both Salilo and Len. But anyway, it brings us to obviously 8:30. I'm struggling to get my guys on the airwaves and on the audio. Sadek, we do understand he's under pressure. But anyway, we were obviously discussing the Euro final. I see all of your comments here and your likes and your views. We acknowledge one and all. You can always interact with us on 061 It's 8:30 on the dot. Coming up next is Car Talk. Stay tuned.